Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're joining us from. I'm conscious we have participants from all over the world, so thank you very much for being here. Today, we're not just talking about maritime security, we're diving into one of the most overlooked and dangerous risks currently in the industry, which is the insider threat. This isn't science fiction or hypothetical, it's real, it's rising, and it's already on board. With trusted crew, contractors, ex-employees, often holding the keys to your most sensitive environment, we're asking a tough question. What happens when the threat is already inside the gates? This session brings together elite level experience across special forces, law enforcement, behavioral threat management, and covert operations. People who not only studied this risk, but lived it, managed it, and neutralized it in real world. We're going to lift the lid on the insider threat, how it forms, how it hides, and how to stop it before it ever makes an impact. We'll cover three critical areas. Human behavior, because intent always becomes before action. Surveillance and technical countermeasures to identify who's watching you and why. Physical penetration testing, real-world tactics to test your vessel's defenses. This isn't about adding more rules, it's about outsmart risk before it takes hold. Before we dive deeper, I'll introduce the team. We've got Philip Grindel, founder of Defuse Global and behavioral threat expert. Philip has over 35 years experience in law enforcement. He led the Parliament's threat assessment team after the very sad and tragic murder of MP Joe Cox. And he brings unmatched insight into how human behavior can either prevent or escalate insider threats. We have Dean Wormleighton. He joins us. Dean has over 30 years of combined military and law enforcement experience. Dean was super sneaky. He has a specialist focus on covert technical operations and physical penetration testing. He's trained special forces, police units, and security teams all across the globe in how to expose and fix hidden vulnerabilities in the most secure environments, literally. And finally, myself, I'm Pete, CEO of Priavo Security. Like 25 years experience, including half of that time with UK Special Forces. I now lead global operations, but we have a very strong emphasis on maritime superyacht operations globally. Together, we're going to give you a 360 view of insider threats and the tools needed to defend against them. This isn't just industry talk. This is now embedded in global risk standards. In August last year, the IMO released its official insider threat toolkit, recognizing this as a priority risk across the maritime operations. It's especially relevant to the superyacht space, small crews, high-value assets, limited oversight, and high-trust environments. So this session is built directly on that guidance. Now, we're going to bring our first guest speaker, Philip, to look at the first critical layer, human behavior. Philip, over to you.
Thank you, Pete. So good afternoon, everyone. My goal for this is that you find it informative, and at the end, you should have a couple of key takeaways that you can implement straight away. So let's start with the real core of this issue. People. Technology gets a lot of attention, but the real risk often sits within the crew lounge, not behind a keyboard. In my experience, whether within Parliament, with corporate clients, or in the ultra-high net worth and super yacht world, it is almost always human behavior that opens the door to the dangers. You can have all the surveillance in the world, but if you don't understand what drives someone to act, whether that's malice, carelessness, or desperation, you're exposed and reactive. So this isn't about ticking compliance boxes. It's about studying patterns. We're looking for changes in behavior, because it's usually these changes, subtle and often ignored, that indicate someone is about to do something stupid, dangerous, or damaging. Next slide, please. So this is where things get real. Because as we've said, the threat isn't always somebody sat in a hoodie, nor is it necessarily a hugely technical attack that you can do nothing about. It's not always sabotage either. It can be someone just being careless or potentially being manipulated. It can be the trusted personal assistant, the long-serving engineer, or a former crew member with a grudge. It could even be us in leadership roles. The job is to spot the early signs. That's why behaviour, not job title, should be the focus. We need to be asking, what's changed? Who's different, more withdrawn, or suddenly flush with cash, or maybe the opposite? Who's disgruntled? Next slide, please. So the 4 pillars of insider threat thinking sums up the entire approach that we use. Miss one of these pieces and you're already behind. The insider. This is the person with access, a real person, not a theoretical risk. They might be loyal or struggling or sitting on a resentment. Everybody talks about systems and firewalls, but it's the human with a passcode and a motive that can do the real damage. The insider threat, this is the potential. They haven't actually acted yet, but something's changed. Cutting corners, perhaps more defensive, maybe gone a bit quiet. You're spotting patterns, not reacting to incidents here. The insider risk, that's your assessment. What is the likelihood that this person might cause harm? What's the damage, the impact, if they do? People focus on the role, not the risk. Don't miss the junior assistant who has access to the most important information. And then we have the actual event. When this happens, disaster happens. An email is sent. Data is leaked. The media are informed. Now you're in damage control. The real value here is stopping it before we get to this stage. And we do that through intelligence, behavioural awareness, and culture. Next slide, please. So people focus a lot on the threats that come from the outside, but very often they come from the inside, and often from the people you'd never expect. Statistically, very few people actually join an organisation or join a super yacht or a crew with the intention to commit harm, which means that the intent is formed whilst they're actually employed. If we consider ourselves to be a potential insider, and we consider the conversations that we have, where we have them, are we leaking information? Is our behaviour appropriate? Have we declared, for instance, some changes in our lives, relationship changes, financial issues, medical issues potentially? These are all issues that have an impact on our vulnerability. And this will be the same for our colleagues, whether they are long-term or just one-day contractors. And we've seen these threats from current staff, ex-crew, management, as we say, contractors, and even day workers. The common thread is they've got access, not just physical access, but access to information, systems, people. So that can be your agenda, your guests, where you're going next, any problems on board. That's all information that's valuable. And at Diffuse, we treat every point of access as a potential vulnerability, because that's exactly what it is. Next slide, please. So let's not pretend that all threats are malicious. Most insider incidents come down to one thing: negligence. According to the research, over half, around 56%, are caused by a simple mistake: clicking the wrong link, leaving a laptop open, speaking too freely or maybe too loudly at a marina bar. That's why training isn't just about compliance. It's about shifting mindsets. We need to look at the intention behind the action. Was it a deliberate act, or was it just someone not paying attention? Either way, the damage is real. Next slide, please. Here's something perhaps uncomfortable. Your culture may be breeding that threat. When people don't trust leadership, or they believe reporting wrongdoing goes nowhere, they'll stay silent. Even if they spot something serious, fear and ignorance keeps their mouths shut. If you want to reduce insider threat, build a culture where speaking up, isn't disloyal, it's professional. So here's the test. If I spent a week with your team conducting confidential investigations and interviews, would I leave thinking this is a safe, fair place to work? Or would I uncover a dozen reasons why someone might feel justified betraying you? The people closest to the problem often see it first, but they'll only tell you if they believe you'll actually listen and act. When did someone last challenge a decision in your organisation without facing consequences? If the most junior team member spotted a fraud tomorrow, would they know exactly who to tell and feel confident about doing it? What would your exit interviews from last year tell you about the real culture behind the closed door? Next slide, please. By the time most insider threats are spotted, it's already too late. What we need to do is shift from reactive to proactive. That means constant monitoring, not of everything, but of those people who've raised risk flags. Don't wait for an incident. Try and stop it before it happens. In the superyacht world, for example, one disgruntled crew member can compromise the owner's safety, the privacy or reputation in minutes. Here are 4 reasons why most incidents go unreported. Either they don't know where to report the concerns, or they don't know exactly what it is you want them to report. What exact behaviours do you want to know about? They don't trust the investigation that will be fair and free from bias. Or they fear repercussions. They fear they'll be sacked, their career ruined, or they'll be accused of being a troublemaker. Now, you may know the answers to these questions. You may know exactly where to report and what to report. But does everybody else? Do you need to remind them regularly? Does it need to be something that is normal practice rather than extreme? It's rarely a surprise. Others will have recognised changes in behaviour. The key is encouraging sharing of these concerns, not because the crew are snitching on each other, but because they care about each other and they care about your clients. Next slide, please.
Phil, I think I just want to jump in there. The reporting is something that we discuss a lot these days. And actually, I was having a chat yesterday about to a management company establishing a reporting process. It is key. We can collate a lot of information for reporting. If there's an anonymous reporting function, I think this also benefits because, onboard crews can be intimidated. I've met crew members intimidated by captains, by everyone, but the management companies need to put a reporting function in place that can be reported anonymously. This, I'm sure you agree, Dale, when you agree, this kind of information can really be valuable towards identifying the insider threat, correct? But Phil, also, it's a really good point about a talk culture and restoring the culture. We all know, snitches get stitches, we don't grouse and all that, but this is a professional environment where everybody's safety is a paramount concern. That culture, there's a difference between snitching or professionally worrying about somebody that could have a bad intent, right? So I think it's a really good point to bring up to discuss that culture within your environment. But we've just explored the role of intent and how risk isn't always about what someone does, but why they might do it. It's this thinking that reshapes how we approach vetting and intelligence. So we transition now. I want to bring Philip back in to dive deeper into behavior profiling, lifestyle screening, and open source intelligence allows us to detect risk before it shows up on your radar. So Phil, over to you again.
Thank you, Pete. I think it's worth saying before we move on that many of the clients that will be using super yachts will operate hugely successful businesses, and in those businesses they will have exactly those processes about reporting wrongdoing, about vetting already in place, and therefore they're going to expect super yacht owners to have the same processes in place. So having them and being able to talk about them will be reassuring rather than concerning.
Yeah.
So let's move on. So it is easy to spot a breach after it happens. We can look at the CCTV, download the footage, log on the swipe cards, etc. Someone might breach a protocol for entirely different reasons. Curiosity, laziness, pressure at home, or maybe a grudge. If you just look at surface behaviour, you'll miss the warning signs every time. Next slide, please. So I'll start by saying I have a number of retained clients. One of our retained clients, a very high profile, ultra high net worth client in the US, informed me 2 weeks ago that him and his family are coming to Europe for the summer, and they are going to be on a yacht. They're hiring a yacht and they're going through a certain route. Interestingly, what he's asked us to do is vet everybody on that crew, including all the leadership, including the owners, everything. He is not going to step foot on that yacht before that's done. Because one of the issues for him is he may have to leave at some point and leave his family behind. He wants to know that his family are safe, physically safe, but also that there's no one on that yacht that might contradict some of his values and beliefs and might contradict some of the things that he posts about and thereby pose a threat. So that's the kind of real life current investigation that we're doing. And again, reinforces why this is so important. But I recognize it's a challenge because very often the crews are transient. But as we touched on, many of your clients will be used to having their employees vetted. They'll expect your crew to be vetted. They're trusting you effectively with their lives. But we need to understand that vetting cannot be just a tick the box exercise. It isn't about due diligence where you're just confirming someone's CV. It's about an investigation, not confirmation. We're looking at digital footprints, lifestyle changes, financial pressures. Is your chef posting something on Instagram that you don't want them to do? Has your engineer just gone through a very messy divorce and is financially struggling? Did someone return overseas with a new bunch of friends that no one knew about? These are all issues that you need to know about. People change. Circumstances change. So what you knew about your employees last year when you had them on board may be very different to who they are now. So your client isn't just buying the service of a yacht. They're buying trust. They're leaving their family on board to feel safe. If you can't vouch for your people today, not 6 months ago, you're gambling with somebody else's safety. And this isn't something you necessarily need to do internally if you don't have the capacity or the skill set. You can outsource this. I mentioned we do it. We're doing it for a client. We're not a super yacht company, but we work for those clients. Next slide, please. So real protection doesn't come from a single policy or a gadget. It's called layered security, layered intelligence. We use a multi-layered approach. We can include open source intelligence, behavioral profiling, confidential reporting rules. It is not about spying. It's about being prepared. By combining public information with behavioral cues, we can spot the threats early, long before there's a headline or a crisis. Think of it as having a radar on the ship. You're never going to stop every threat, but you can see them coming and get ahead of the game. Next slide, please. So this is the tricky part, the spotting the lies before they become losses. Now, some people are brilliant liars, but very often their body language, their linguistics or word choices or patterns will give them away, as long as you know what to look for. We train your teams to recognize deception early, during interviews, daily chats or routine check-ins. Most threats aren't obvious, they're subtle, but with the right tools, you can see past the surface. Next slide. So we have some key takeaways for you today. The first one is continuing crew vetting and lifestyle monitoring. Any vetting, anything like that, or due diligence that you do, cannot be a one-off process. It has to be a live document, something that you're regularly reviewing, something that you're monitoring. And if you are seeing changes in behavior, have a coffee with someone, have a drink with someone, ask them what's changed. Insider threat reporting. Make it easy to report people's concerns. They don't have to be reporting concerns because they think someone's done something wrong. They might be just worried about one of their colleagues. Make it easy, safe, and reliable. Intelligence isn't enough. Very often, intelligence is data. It's the analysis of the data that's critical. And the same with human behavior. and analyse what people's behaviour is. Look for changes. Hope that's useful. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Phil. It's really interesting. We can't drum home enough how important vetting is, but we launched maritime checks a few years ago for this very reason. We identified the absolute lack of vetting, and like Phil touches on there, we can find out a lot about people with the vetting. A basic check, ticking the box. But enhanced checks, we can we can look at digital footprint, social media, and actually gauge intent and almost get a psychological profile on that individual. It's absolutely paramount. But so far, again, thanks, Phil. But so far, we've talked about the why behind it inside the threats. But now let's look at the how. Because intent only becomes dangerous when it's paired with tools and access. That brings us to surveillance. On a shipyard, privacy is currency, and that makes it a prime target. We've seen hidden devices in cabins, comms gear, electronics, even toys. And that's why TSCM, or technical surveillance countermeasures, is no longer an option. This should be built into your risk framework. So then we've got Dean. Dean, our resident expert on this, he's going to walk us through what it looks like in real world scenarios. So Dean, you're up. Tell us what is TSCM, and secondly, why is it so prevalent now? And why is it becoming more and more of a concern? And why are we finding more and more devices as we start?
Thank you, Peter. So TSCM, technical surveillance countermeasures, it's the art of detecting technical devices that have been installed to obtain data intelligence or information regarding a client. As you alluded to, why has it become more prevalent nowadays? The reason is the days when we used to install it years ago, typical deployments for government agencies or institutions cost thousands, if not hundreds of thousands.
Yep.
And that would include costs into the staff, the equipment, and everything. And more often than not, you'd have to recover that.
Yeah, we have to go and get them back.
It would, and that's hours of time.
And double the risk.
Exactly. So nowadays, the equipment and the quality of the equipment and the cost of the equipment has come down so significant that 20, 30, 50, 100 pounds could supply you with some really high-end equipment, quality equipment that's shown on the street at the moment, which literally can be deployed in seconds.
Yeah.
We have a section of equipment shown in the moment, but it's really ridiculously cheap.
Almost throw and forget now. And as you can see, Dean can build a camera into anything. Dean is an absolute guru at this. Sorry, Sam, just go back one there, please. As you can see, some of these are really, really useful. The key fobs on incept keys, they're like 720 pixel.
720, 1280, yeah.
There's to 8 hours recording time on that. Coffee cups, flowers, smoke detectors. These are things that, you can go on and stick a smoke detector up. How many of you would say that wasn't there before? These are really easily deployable. And sorry, Sam, next slide. And as you can see now, even I haven't seen anything like this before, but, Dean's always ahead of the game.
With regards to the cameras that are on the screen at the moment, that's sort of, the level of deploying those could be down to 1 mil or half a mil whole per view.
Incredible. And what kind of range would that give you, Dean? What sort of?
That type of camera will give you broadcast quality, clarity in a room that's probably 20, 30 wide. So on a yacht, you get really good clarity of images and audio in that room.
Incredible. And we've found similar devices to this on many yachts now.
Absolutely.
And so what can we do about that then?
Well, we can undertake technical surveillance countermeasures, which that would involve undertaking a combination of searching, physical searching, and doing a technical sweep using technical equipment for optical, electrical, and radio frequencies.
Yeah. And look, guys, we've been doing this. There's some members of this audience. We've been on your yachts carrying out these sweeps. Like I say, I don't think this is any longer optional. And now what we're doing is training you. We're training you, providing the equipment so that you can carry these out more regularly. Remember, wherever you sweep is only sterile for as long as you let the cleaner back in, right? So there's just SOPs around that sweep also being to maintain that. We're going to show you some other equipment. We've actually created this on a video because of the screen size and everything. So I think we look the same, although I had a haircut since we did the video. But so I'm going to play this now. We're going to talk about some of the equipment in front of us. Great deal. I think, it's like I said, scary, but, we focused on some of the kit that we would throw and forget almost. We've actually found one of these devices in a pen pot on board a yacht. But we don't just look at internal, these are the threats, but what about the equipment we would use to carry out an attack on a vessel, which obviously adversaries would use? We've got some of the equipment in front of us. Perhaps you could talk us through, maybe start with stick.
Absolutely. Externally, yeah. So we're looking at an external attack scenario. So this is the stick, the log that we've got here, and inside that, we deployed an IMSI grabber on a recent deployment. IMSI grabber being a man-in-the-middle attack device that enables us to capture data off the mobile phone, be it whatever data, and that gave us access to their access control system and various other things that was available to us. When this was deployed, it was supported with a camera, and the camera was inside the house brick, which is here. You can sort of see the mark there, the black mark where the camera was deployed. And what this gave us was the video intelligence to know that when we were capturing data, the image we saw on the screen was actually relevant to the person or a bit of interest when it cut the IMSI grabbing system.
But it's also given us any knowledge of compromise as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
We deploy this kit, but is anybody picked up? Is anybody suspicious of it? By using the camera Overwatch, we get that information too.
Yes, and also with that as well, the key thing for this is we don't just generically deploy this one fits all scenario. So these are a selection of different hides that are on the table that you see here now. So rubberized housing. You've got a rock that Pete has in his hand now, again, that's hollowed out. These are made specifically for the target locations. So it's the key from this is to be aware of your location and not around you and know the site.
Yes, it. And we touched on information gathering. Obviously, we can use this for a whole plethora of reasons, right? But we've deployed this under a pass rail. You've got your guests, you've got your crew, and everybody passing over this, and we're grabbing data off that phone. What can we do about this, Dean?
So there are devices out there to prevent IMSI grabbing. Mm-hmm. The very basic rule of thumb is if you haven't got the capability to get a device, you can use a Faraday cage bag, which is a very simple bag that's quite cost effective. That's very short term, but the problem with the Faraday bag is that shuts you off just for that moment in time. Sorry. But there's greater technology out there. We've
done this on some yachts with been used for very, very high profile meetings. We have used Faraday bags, but that's because of the nature of the event. But every day today, I think one thing, if you're unsure, give the kick. Just going, just quick clearance patrol around your vessel. What's this? What's that? Kick it over, and we're good. But yeah, thanks, Dave. And just one more question, actually. I just thought, what's the range on an IMSI grabber?
So an IMSI grabber, typically, because it's creating a cell site, would probably do 20 to 30 feet quite easily. So it's quite frightening, really.
Yeah, okay. That's great. Interested. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Peter.
Scary stuff, but it's real. The threat is real, internal and external. And if you think it won't happen to you, Dean, why don't you tell us about what happened to the US Embassy a long time ago? Many of you might remember.
Yeah, so many years ago, some of you may recall, the Russians gifted the American seal plaque to one of the American embassies, and that sat on the wall behind the governor of the embassy for many years, and was later discovered to have a passive audio device installed in it that had been collecting audio from the embassy, and that was an unpowered device that was actually powered by the Russians remotely.
With microwave, and it's microwave.
Yeah, it was quite dangerous as well, but yeah, that took many years to be discovered. In fact, nothing in American embassy, we'll have to worry about what happened, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, it's, we can go on, and there's so much equipment available, but now we're going to take it one step further, because identifying surveillance risks is only half the battle. The next is testing your defenses under real world conditions. This is where physical penetration test comes in, PTT. It's the ultimate reality check, where we simulate real world attack. And again, we've got a subject matter expert, being actually wrote the manual.
Okay, pass it.
Yeah. So, Dean, why don't you tell us about?
Yeah, so what is physical penetration testing? So physical penetration testing is the art of ethically attacking an organisation or an individual ethically. So what we would do is we would undertake a client brief with the client to understand what the realistic threats are against the organisation. Once we've established that, we would then organise a reconnaissance and of the particular areas of interest, and when we would move into lifestyling. Lifestyling consists of understanding the movements and the operations of the organisation, the individuals, and everything involved in that. We then move on to planning. So we would look to plan a realistic attack against that target or asset, and then we would actually undertake the attack. Now, the idea of this isn't to embarrass anybody. It's to raise awareness regarding training and to give them a baseline to move forward to better plan and prep to have the company better prepared.
And actually, we carry these out on some companies on a regular basis, but it's spontaneous, right? So, but the idea behind this is we're carrying out regular training, but we're keeping people on their toes. Whether they're expecting us or a real threat. I suppose we are a real threat in some respects, but it does well. It keeps them on their toes. But this is a real eye-opener, to test your own defences. You learn so much from penetration testing. And then we've carried this out and we've been told, didn't get on the boat, didn't do this. Funny enough, our business card was on the owner's plate that night. We've got this lockdown system, all these cameras, blah, 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 but who searches your tenders at night before you put them into the garage? We always find a way. And Dean, you've done a lot of this, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've done over 350 pen tests over the years. I played a key part back in 2018 in developing the physical penetration testing qualification, which is now a national qualification. And the key thing from this is understanding what the highest threats are, and not about embarrassing individuals.
Absolutely,
yeah.
It can be absolutely. It can have some fun.
Yeah,
but it really does highlight vulnerability.
It does, yeah.
And just out of them 350, how many was unsuccessful?
I've got into every single site in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So it's a real valuable tool. I'm going to wrap up now. I hope this has been of interest. I'm going to wrap up. Before I do, please do type in any questions. We've got some time for questions and answers. So it'd be great to answer any of those. But some really eye-opening insights here, especially around the reality of what can be accessed and how quickly vulnerabilities can be exposed. Just to emphasize, everyone, this isn't paranoia. This is precision. If Dean's team could access in a controlled test, so can someone with bad intentions. Before I close, I want to leave you with a personal view. What we shared today, behavioral risk detection, continuous vetting, TSCM, and penetration shouldn't just be seen as good practice. These measures should be recognized as best practice. In fact, they should form part of your critical risk infrastructure for any serious your operations. They're not reactive, they're proactive. They reduce liability, protect privacy, and ultimately safeguard reputation. This is about future-proofing security in one of the most sensitive and luxurious environments on Earth. We covered a lot today. We want to hear from you. Please drop the questions in the chat. Don't worry, everybody. We will send out a copy of today's slides, follow up with contact details and some further information based on what we've talked about. But I really hope this has been informative, and I really hope that you do have some takeaways from this. The reason I did this webinar was because even despite the IMO's toolkit, we still see an absolute lack of interest in this real risk. And as a security professionals, we understand fully how regular this is, how common this is, and how effective this threat is. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Phil, for all your time you spent on this. And any questions, we'll fire them away if there is any.